While I was in the hospital receiving treatment, my wife went to Hawaii with her lover, while my son was busy trying to win over his wealthy father-in-law. A week later, when they returned home, the house was completely empty. All that remained was a photo on the kitchen counter with a note. "What you are looking for is on the back." They turned the photo over and panicked immediately, calling their lawyer. "I'm so glad you're here with Dad's revenge stories. Which city or country are you watching this from? Tell me in the comments." Please note, this story includes fictional elements crafted for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to actual names or locations is strictly coincidental, but the underlying message brings clear value. The morning they admitted me to Buffalo General Hospital, the maple trees outside were on fire. That is the only way I know how to describe it. October in western New York does that turns every tree along Delaware Avenue into something that looks like it is burning from the inside out. All orange and red and gold, like the whole world is trying to show you something beautiful before the cold comes and takes it all away. I had been staring at those trees for 41 years. I never got tired of them. I got tired of a lot of other things, but never the trees. My name is Raymond Earl Stafford. I am 68 years old. For 42 years, I worked as a residential electrician in the greater Buffalo area commercial builds. Home rewires, panel upgrades. The kind of work that keeps the lights on for everybody else, while you forget to keep them on for yourself. I retired 3 years ago, though retired is a generous word for what I did. I just ran out of reasons to keep saying yes to every job that called. The morning of October 7th, 2024, I was doing a favor for an old customer named Harold Briggs, a widower over on Elmwood, who had a breaker box that had been giving him trouble since the summer. I told him I would come by and take a look. It was not a job. It was just what you do for people you have known for 20 years. I was on my knees beside the panel when the pain arrived. It did not feel the way the television commercials say it feels. There was no dramatic clutching of the chest, no slow collapse to the floor. It felt like someone had reached inside my ribcage and tightened a fist around something that was not supposed to be squeezed. I sat back against Harold's basement wall and breathed through it for about 30 seconds, and then I told myself it was indigestion. I had eaten a sausage biscuit from the gas station that morning, which Gloria had told me 100 times would kill me one day. I thought about that, about Gloria being right, and almost laughed. Then the pain came back harder, and I stopped thinking about being funny. Harold found me sitting on his basement floor and called 911 before I could tell him not to. The paramedics arrived in 4 minutes. They were both young enough to be my grandchildren, and they worked on me with the kind of calm efficiency that told me they had done this many times before. One of them, a young woman with red hair tucked under her cap, kept talking to me the whole ride over, telling me her name, telling me what they were doing, telling me I was going to be fine. I appreciated that. I did not fully believe her, but I appreciated it. At Buffalo General, a doctor named Kevin Okafor met me in the emergency bay. He was a compact man and in his early 50s, with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and the kind of steady hands that make you trust someone immediately. He explained that I had experienced what he called a mild myocardial event, a small heart attack in plain English, and that they needed to monitor me for at least a week to assess the damage and determine the next steps. "The good news," he said, pulling a chair close to my bed, "is that you got here fast, and you are otherwise in reasonable shape for a man your age. The bad news is that your heart has been working harder than it should for some time now. This was a warning, Mr. Stafford, not a catastrophe. But warnings only help if you listen to them." "I have always been a good listener," I told him. He smiled, but his eyes stayed serious. "Is there someone we should call, a family member who can come in?" I gave him Gloria's number, then Marcus's. I watched him write them both down on the small notepad he kept in his coat pocket. "Your wife and your son," he said. "Yes," I said. He nodded and left to make the calls himself. I lay back against the pillow and listened to the machines beside me making their steady, patient sounds. Through the window at the end of the hall, I could see another maple tree, this one against a pale gray October sky, its leaves burning just like all the others. The chair beside my bed was a standard hospital chair, blue vinyl metal frame, the kind that is not comfortable for anyone, but is better than nothing. Gloria had a preference for sitting on my left side whenever I was in a hospital or a doctor's office. She had done it after my knee surgery 12 years ago. She had done it after the gallbladder removal 6 years before that. She always brought a paperback book and a bottle of water and settled in like she was prepared to stay as long as it took. I looked at that chair for a long time. The machines beeped. The hall outside my room hummed with the ordinary sounds of a hospital going about its business. A nurse came in, checked my vitals, adjusted something on the IV line, and gave me a small nod before leaving. An hour passed. Then another. I picked up my phone one more time. 1 bar of signal. Her name was right there at the top of my contacts. I pressed call. It rang 4 times. Then voicemail. I set the phone face down on the blanket and looked out the window at the maple trees turning orange outside. The chair stayed empty. She called at 9:47 the next morning. I know the exact time because I had been watching the clock above the door since 6, the way you do when you are waiting for something and trying to pretend to yourself that you are not. The room had filled with early light, thin and gray, the way October light gets in Buffalo when the clouds come in off Lake Erie and settle over the city like a lid being pressed down on a pot. A nurse named Sandra had already been in twice to check my vitals and adjust my IV line, and she had done it with the cheerful efficiency of someone who genuinely liked her job, which I appreciated more than I could say. My phone lit up on the bedside table. Gloria. I picked it up before the second ring. "Raymond!" Her voice was even. Not relieved, not frightened, not the voice of a woman who had spent the night worrying about her husband in a hospital bed. Just even. The way you sound when you are calling the cable company to dispute a charge. "How are you feeling?" "I had a heart attack, Gloria." The doctor said it was mild. It was still a heart attack. She made a small sound that was not quite agreement and not quite disagreement. "Well, are they taking good care of you?" I pressed my back against the pillow and stared at the ceiling tiles. There were 42 of them in my room. I had counted twice already. "They are doing fine," I said. "Good." A pause. I could hear something in the background music, low and easy, the kind they play in hotel lobbies or upscale restaurants. "I am in the middle of something right now, but I wanted to check in. You have everything you need." I wanted to ask her where she was. I wanted to ask why I could hear what sounded like ocean wind somewhere behind her voice. Instead, I said, "When are you coming?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Raymond, it is complicated right now. You know how things get." "I had a heart attack," I said again. I do not know why I kept saying it. Maybe I thought if I said it enough times, it would start to mean something different to her. "I know," she said, "and I will be there as soon as I can. I promise." The music in the background swelled slightly, then faded. "I have to go. You rest. Call me if anything changes." She hung up before I could answer. 3 minutes and 12 seconds. I checked the call log afterward, the way you check a receipt when you feel like you have been shortchanged. 3 minutes and 12 seconds from hello to goodbye for a husband in the cardiac unit. Marcus sent a text at noon. Just 8 words. Hope you feel better, Dad. Talk soon. No call, no follow-up. Just 8 words fired off between whatever else he had going on. The way you text a coworker who is out sick, not a father who spent the night hooked up to a heart monitor. I set the phone down and looked at the window. The knock at my door came at 2 in the afternoon. I expected a nurse. Instead, a woman I knew very well was standing in the doorway, with a covered pot in both hands and a folded newspaper tucked under her arm, wearing a blue raincoat that was damp at the shoulders. "Patricia Mullins," I said. "Ma, do not Patricia me," she said, already moving into the room and setting the pot on the small table near the window. "I took the number 14 bus and transferred at Main Street in the rain, Raymond. So the least you can do is look grateful." Patty Mullins had lived next door to us on Nottingham Terrace for going on 19 years. She was 66 years old, a retired school librarian, and the kind of woman who remembered every neighbor's birthday, kept a spare key for every house on the block, and made chicken soup from scratch when someone was sick. Not from a can, not from a carton, from an actual chicken. She had simmered on her stove since 6 that morning. "You did not have to do this," I said. "You are correct," she said, unwrapping 2 paper bowls and a plastic spoon from her coat pocket. "I did not have to. I chose to. There is a difference." She poured the soup, handed me a bowl, and pulled the visitor chair close to the bed. The blue vinyl chair that had been empty since yesterday. She sat in it like it was the most natural thing in the world. I had to look away for a moment. We ate in the easy quiet of people who have known each other long enough that silence does not need to be filled. After a while, Patty unfolded the newspaper and read me a story about the Bills' offensive line that made us both shake our heads. I told her about Dr. Okafor. She told me about Harold Briggs, who had apparently called her after the ambulance left to make sure someone knew what had happened. "Good man, Harold," I said. "He was beside himself," Patty said. "Called me 3 times. I thought about that. Harold Briggs, a man I had known for 20 years, called my neighbor 3 times to make sure I was all right. My wife had called once. My son had sent 8 words. Before Patty left, she helped me organize the few things I had brought with me. My wallet, my reading glasses, the small leather notebook I kept in my shirt pocket out of habit. As she folded my jacket over the back of the chair, something fell from the breast pocket and landed on the floor between us. A receipt from last Tuesday. I picked it up before she could. Stared at it. It was a delivery confirmation. From a home goods order, Gloria had placed face cream specialty coffee, a cashmere throw blanket. $342. The delivery address at the bottom was not our address on Nottingham Terrace. I did not recognize the street name, but I recognized the zip code. It was not ours. Raymond, Patty was watching me. "What is it?" I folded the receipt carefully and slid it into my notebook. "Nothing," I said. "Thank you for the soup, Patty. It was the best thing I have eaten in 2 days." She studied my face for a moment, the way smart women do when they know you are lying but decide to let it go for now. Then she buttoned her blue raincoat, tucked the newspaper under her arm, and squeezed my hand once before she walked out the door. I did not know the address, but I knew our street number by heart. And that wasn't it. The 3rd morning I made a mistake. I opened Facebook. I never used social media much. Gloria had set up an account for me years ago, so I could see pictures of Marcus and Sabrina's wedding. And after that, I mostly used it to look at photos of Tyler when Marcus remembered to post them. I was not the kind of man who scrolled through his phone looking for things to feel bad about. But that morning, lying in a hospital bed with nothing but ceiling tiles and my own thoughts for company, I opened the app and started looking for a picture of my grandson. I found something else instead. Gloria's profile was set to public. She had never bothered to change it, or maybe she simply never thought it mattered. The post had gone up at 2:17 in the afternoon the day before while I was in the middle of my second round of cardiac monitoring. The photograph showed a wide blue ocean behind a wooden dock, the kind of dock you see in travel magazines with white sailboats in the distance and the sun hitting the water at an angle that made everything look like a painting. Gloria was standing at the railing in a yellow dress I had never seen before. Beside her, with one arm around her shoulders and a drink in his free hand, stood a man I did not recognize. He was around her age, silver-haired, broad-shouldered, smiling the loose and easy smile of someone who had nowhere else to be. The caption read, "Finally taking the trip we always talked about." I read it 3 times. Then I looked at this man's arm around my wife's shoulders. Then I read it again. My chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with my heart condition. I set the phone face up on the blanket beside me and pressed both hands flat against my thighs, the way I used to do on job sites when something had gone badly wrong, and I needed 30 seconds before I could trust myself to speak. The machines beside me kept beeping at the same steady pace. The hall outside kept humming. The world did not pause for what I had just seen. After a while, I picked the phone back up and called Marcus. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Dad!" His voice had the clipped, distracted quality of someone in a conversation they are trying to get out of quickly. "Hey, how are you feeling?" "Where are you right now?" I asked. "Work stuff," he said. "You know how it is. Client thing." "Marcus," I kept my voice level. 42 years of working with live electrical current teaches you not to flinch. "I am asking where you are." A brief pause. "Dallas," he said. "I told you there is a client situation down here that needs handling." "I was going to call you tonight, Dad, I swear. How are the doctors treating you?" "Fine," I said. "Good. Good, that is good." I could hear cutlery in the background, the low murmur of a restaurant or a dining room. Someone laughed nearby, a woman's laugh, bright and practiced. "Listen, I have to jump back in here, but I will call you tonight, okay? Promise." He hung up before I finished saying goodbye. I sat with the phone in my hand and thought about the word promise. Gloria had used it yesterday. Marcus had just used it now. In my experience, people reach for that word most often when they have no intention of keeping it. I was still thinking about that when the knock came at my door. The woman who entered was somewhere in her late 50s, dressed in the careful, coordinated way of someone who took appearance. Seriously pressed slacks, a cream-colored blouse, pearl earrings. She was carrying a small gift bag with a ribbon on the handle, and she smiled at me with the polished warmth of a woman who had spent decades being pleasant in rooms where pleasantness was expected. "Mr. Stafford," she said. "I hope I am not interrupting. I am Brenda Whitmore, Sabrina's mother." She set the gift bag on the table near the window, the spot where Patty's soup pot had sat the day before. "We heard what happened, and I wanted to stop by personally. Marcus mentioned you were here." "That is very kind of you," I said. I meant it. Whatever my feelings about the Whitmore family and their money, Brenda herself had always been civil to me. She pulled the visitor chair close and sat with her hands folded in her lap. We exchanged the usual pleasantries, my health, the hospital, the October weather. She asked if I needed anything, and I told her I was being well looked after. Then she smiled and said, "Marcus gave such a wonderful presentation last night at our home. Gerald was very impressed. I think this partnership could really be something special for him." She said it the way you mention something that everyone already knows. Casually, warmly. The way you reference a family dinner that the whole family attended. I kept my face exactly where it was. "Is that right?" I said. He has such drive, that boy. Brenda smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her slacks. Gerald always says the ones who come from hard-working families have the real foundation. You must be so proud. I am, I said. She stayed another 10 minutes and left with another warm smile and a squeeze of my hand. I listened to her heels click down the hallway until they faded. Then I looked at the gift bag she had left. Inside was a small tin of shortbread cookies and a get-well card signed by the entire Whitmore family, including Marcus and Sabrina. Marcus, who was too busy to call his father in the hospital. Marcus, who had just given a presentation at the Whitmore house in Dallas last night, while I was counting ceiling tiles alone. I put the card back in the bag, set the bag on the floor beside the chair, and picked up my phone again. I opened Gloria's Facebook post one more time and looked at the man with his arm around her shoulders. Stuart Crane. I could see his name now in the tagged section below the photo. I looked at the two of them standing on that dock in the Hawaiian sun, and something shifted in my chest. Not the cardiac kind. The other kind. The kind that does not show up on any monitor no matter how many electrodes they tape to your skin. I set the phone face down on the blanket and looked at the ceiling. 42 tiles. I had counted them enough times to know. Whatever I thought my life looked like from the outside, something very different had been happening on the inside for a long time. And I was only now beginning to understand how long. Patty arrived the next morning before the breakfast trays came around. She was carrying the family iPad in a canvas tote bag, along with a container of cut fruit and a thermos of coffee she had brewed at home, because, as she put it, hospital coffee was an insult to the concept of coffee. She set everything on the table by the window, poured me a cup without asking, and handed me the iPad with both hands, the way you hand someone something fragile. You asked me to bring it, she said. So I brought it. Thank you, Patty. Do not thank me yet. She sat down in the blue chair and opened her fruit container. I saw Marcus's car in the driveway Friday morning, by the way. Early, before 7. I looked at her over the rim of the thermos cup. What was he doing? Carrying boxes out, she said. And a lamp. Your reading lamp, I think. The tall one from the bedroom corner. She stabbed a piece of cantaloupe with a plastic fork and did not look at me when she said it. I took pictures, in case you needed them. I set the coffee down carefully on the bedside table. Patty pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward me. 4 photographs. My reading lamp on the front walkway. 2 cardboard boxes stacked near the curb. Marcus's silver Audi idling in the driveway with the trunk open. And in the last photograph taken through Patty's kitchen window at an angle, Marcus standing in the doorway of my house, talking on his phone, one hand gesturing the way he did when he was explaining something to someone and expected them to simply agree. My jaw tightened. I handed her phone back without a word. I opened the iPad. I had asked Patty to bring it because I needed to check my health insurance portal. There were forms that needed completing before the end of the week, pre-authorization paperwork that the hospital billing department had flagged that morning. I opened the browser, filled out what needed filling, and was about to close the screen when I noticed the iMessage icon in the corner. A small red circle, 14 unread notifications. Gloria had been logged into her iMessage account on this iPad for as long as I could remember. We had bought the device together 3 years ago for video calls with Marcus and Sabrina, and she had never signed out. I had never thought to look at her messages before. I had never had a reason to. I had a reason now. I pressed the icon. The most recent thread was between Gloria and Marcus. The last message had been sent 2 days ago, the morning after I was admitted. I scrolled up, slowly reading from the beginning of the thread, and the further back I went, the heavier my hands became. Gloria, 4 days before my hospitalization, Marcus, your father, has been asking too many questions about the accounts. We need to move sooner rather than later. Marcus same day agreed. Once the Whitmore deal comes through, we will have the leverage we need. Just keep things calm on your end. Gloria 3 days before he trusts me. That has always been the problem with your father. He trusts too easily. I stopped reading for a moment. My chest was doing the thing again, not the cardiac thing, the other thing, and I made myself breathe slowly through my nose the way Dr. Okafor had shown me. In for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. I kept reading. Gloria, the morning after my heart attack, he is stable. The doctor says a week minimum. This actually gives us more time than I thought. Marcus, good. Wait until he is out. Then we handle the house. Gloria, he is old, Marcus. He does not need all that space anymore. We have been carrying this too long. Marcus, I already moved some of his things out of the master, took the bigger room back, told the Garfields next door that he was probably going to move somewhere smaller. Assisted living, maybe. Gloria, perfect. Keep it quiet. He will not make a scene. You know how he is. Marcus, yeah. He never does. I read that last line 3 times. He never does. 40 years of never making a scene. 40 years of yes and of course and whatever you think is best. 40 years of working overtime and coming home tired and trusting the people who were supposed to trust me back. And here in blue text bubbles on a shared family iPad was what that had looked like from the other side of the room. My hands were not shaking. I want to be clear about that. I am not a man whose hands shake easily. But something was moving through me that I did not have a clean word for, not anger, exactly, not grief, exactly, something that sat between the two like a stone dropped into still water, sending rings outward in every direction. I scrolled further. There were older messages, discussions about the house, about what it would sell for, about whether Gloria would keep it or split the proceeds. Marcus had written at some point in August, Dad bought that house before you two got married, technically. But he never changed anything legally. It is basically community property at this point. Get a lawyer on standby just in case. I closed the iMessage app. I sat for a moment with the iPad resting on my blanketed knees. Then I turned to Patty, who had been eating her fruit in silence, and watching me with the careful attention of someone who already suspected what I had found. Patty, I said, do you still have those photographs on your phone? Every single one, she said. Good. I handed the iPad back to her. I am going to need you to do one more thing for me. I need you to go home, look in the closet in the hallway, the narrow one beside the linen shelf, and bring me a blue metal box. It is behind the winter coats. It has a small key lock, but the key is taped to the inside of the closet door frame. Patty set down her fruit container and looked at me steadily. Raymond, what is in the box? Everything, I said. Everything they forgot I had. Sandra reminded me it was my birthday. She came in at 7:15 that morning to check my vitals the same way she did every morning, moving around the room with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this 10,000 times and still managed to make it feel personal. She wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my arm, watched the monitor, noted the number in her tablet, and then looked up at me with a smile that reached all the way to her eyes. Happy birthday, Mr. Stafford, she said. 68 today? I had forgotten. That was the honest truth of it. I had been so occupied with what I had read on the iPad, with the photographs Patty had shown me, with the sound of Marcus's voice on the phone saying, I have to jump back in here, that my own birthday had simply slipped out of my mind like a name you cannot quite reach. Thank you, Sandra, I said. I appreciate you remembering. It is in your chart. She pulled the cuff free and set it on the monitor. Does your family, are they coming by today? I looked at the window. Outside, the October sky had gone the color of old pewter flat and heavy, the kind of sky that cannot decide whether it wants to rain or simply sit there pressing down on everything beneath it. "I imagine they are busy," I said. Sandra studied me for exactly 1 second. Then she said, "I will see if we have anything in the break room," and left without making it into a bigger moment than it needed to be. That was a skill, I thought. Knowing when not to push. I spent the morning the way I had spent the previous mornings, slowly. I read 3 pages of a magazine someone had left on the windowsill. I watched a maintenance worker replace a fluorescent bulb in the hallway outside my room. I counted the ceiling tiles again, not because I had forgotten the number, but because it gave my hands something to do while my mind worked through everything I had read on that iPad. He never does. Those 3 words had followed me through the night and into the morning, and I could not seem to set them down anywhere they would stay. Marcus had written them about me, about my own father, about the man who had driven him to every baseball practice from age 7 to 14, who had stayed up until 2 in the morning, helping him with a science project on electrical circuits in the 8th grade, who had written a personal check for $5,600 so that Marcus and Sabrina could have the wedding they wanted instead of the one they could afford. He never does. At noon, Gloria did not call. At 1, Marcus did not call. At 2:30, I got a text from a former coworker named Dennis Purcell that said, "Happy birthday, old man. Hope you are staying out of trouble," which made me smile in a way that felt strange on my face, like a muscle I had not used in a while. Patty arrived at 3:15 with a bakery box from a place called Anderson's on Sheridan Drive that had been in Buffalo since before either of us was born. Inside the box was a single slice of their white cake with buttercream frosting, and she had asked them to put 1 candle on it, a small blue birthday candle that had already dripped slightly from the drive over. "I know it is not much," she said, setting the box open on my tray table. "It is exactly right," I told her. She lit the candle with a book of matches from her coat pocket. The flame was small and steady in the still air of the hospital room. I looked at it for a moment, that one small flame in the middle of all that white frosting, and I felt something move through my throat that I was not prepared for. Not sadness, exactly. Something older than sadness. Something that had been sitting in my chest for a long time, waiting for a quiet enough moment to make itself known. I blew the candle out. "Make a wish," Patty asked. "I think I am past the age for wishes," I said. "Nobody is past the age for wishes, Raymond Earl Stafford." She cut the cake with a plastic knife from her coat pocket, because of course she had thought to bring one, and handed me the larger of the 2 pieces she made. We ate the cake together. It was good cake. Anderson's had always made good cake. Outside the window, the heavy sky finally made up its mind, and it began to rain, a slow and steady buffalo rain that ran down the glass in long, thin lines. At 7 in the evening, I picked up my phone. Gloria had posted again. A sunset photograph, this time all pink and gold over dark water, the kind of photograph that travel photographers spend careers chasing. She had captioned it, "Some places just fill your soul." There were 43 comments. Heart emojis, flame emojis, people writing beautiful and goals, and "you deserve this." I scrolled past it. Marcus had posted an Instagram story. I only saw it because Patty had shown me how to look at his profile on the iPad earlier in the week. It was a video 15 seconds long shot across a long dinner table with crystal glasses and candles and the kind of flower arrangement that costs more than my first car. Marcus was laughing at something off camera, his arm around Sabrina, looking like a man without a single weight in the world. The caption read, "Family first. Always." I set the phone down on the blanket. Outside, the rain came harder. I listened to it against the window, that particular sound that rain makes against hospital glass. Slightly hollow, slightly distant, like it belongs to a world that is going on without you. Patty had gone home an hour ago. The room was quiet in the way that rooms get quiet when visiting hours end and the building settles into itself. I thought about 68 years, about what I had built and what I had carried and what I had let go of without realizing I was letting it go. About the cake with one candle. About Dennis Purcell texting from across the city when the people under my own roof had not managed to dial 7 digits. I said it out loud to the empty room, to the rain against the glass. I think I have been invisible for a very long time. The room did not answer. But saying it out loud made it real in a way it had not been before. And real, I was beginning to understand, was where everything had to start. Cliff Morrow showed up at 8 in the morning with the blue box under one arm and a cup of gas station coffee in his free hand. He was 71 years old, 6 feet, even built the way men who worked with their hands for 50 years tend to be built, not large exactly, but solid in a way that had nothing to do with a gym. He had worked alongside me at Hendrix Electrical for 19 years before we both moved on to independent work, and in all that time I had never once heard him raise his voice on a job site. Cliff Morrow was the kind of man who fixed things quietly and expected the same from everyone around him. When I had called him the night before and told him what I needed, he had listened without interrupting, said, "Give me the address of that closet one more time," and hung up. He set the blue box on my tray table and the coffee on the windowsill and pulled the visitor chair close without being invited. "You look better than I expected," he said. "Low bar," I told him. "Fair enough?" He nodded at the box. Key was right where you said. Taped to the door frame inside corner. Good hiding spot." "Gloria never cleaned that closet," I said. "In 30 years. Cliff almost smiled. Almost. Smart man. I opened the box. The documents inside were organized the way I had always organized important papers, not by date, not alphabetically, but by weight. The things that mattered most were on top. The deed to the house on Nottingham Terrace was the first thing I touched. A single sheet of paper inside a clear, protective sleeve issued by Erie County in the state of New York on March 14, 1987. Property owner Raymond Earl Stafford. One name. No additions, no amendments, no joint ownership notation of any kind. I had bought that house 2 years before I met Gloria. I had saved for the down payment, working double shifts for 18 months, living in a rented room above a hardware store on Hertel Avenue, eating sandwiches for dinner, because anything else felt like a luxury I had not yet earned. The mortgage had been in my name alone. I had paid the final installment in April of 2003, 19 years ago, standing at a bank counter on Main Street and writing a check that cleared my account almost entirely. The payoff letter was in the box, too, right behind the deed. Raymond Earl Stafford, paid in full. Under New York state law, property purchased before marriage is generally considered separate property. In most cases, that means the person who purchased it keeps ownership, although certain circumstances during the marriage can sometimes affect financial interests. I had not known that language when I bought the house. I had simply bought it because I needed somewhere to live. But the law had been on my side for 35 years without my knowing it, which struck me now as one of the better pieces of news I had received in a long time. "Marcus thinks he is inheriting that house," I said. Cliff wrapped both hands around his gas station coffee. "I know. He told his father-in-law that at some dinner a few months back. Gerald Whitmore mentioned it to his contractor, who mentioned it to his supplier, who used to buy wire from us back in the day." He paused. "Word gets around. He has no idea the deed is in my name alone." "No," Cliff said. He does not. I set the deed aside and worked through the rest of the box. The mortgage payoff letter. 12 years of utility bills in my name. The homeowner's insurance policy renewed annually, always under Raymond Earl Stafford policyholder. I pulled out a thinner folder underneath those and opened it across my knees. 5 years of receipts and bank statements. Marcus's car insurance billed to my account since 2019, $8,200 over 5 years. The utility autopay for Nottingham Terrace, which I had been covering since Gloria closed her flower shop, $4,600. The Audi payment records $9,800 across the down payment and 31 subsequent monthly transfers into Marcus's account, each one preceded by a text from him that I had printed out and paperclipped to the corresponding statement. Dad, just need a little help this month. Swear I will pay you back. Dad, the insurance came due early. Can you cover me just this once? Dad, I know I keep asking, but the Whitmore deal is almost closed, and after that I will be solid, I promise. 22 messages. 22 times I had said yes without a second thought, because he was my son, and that was what fathers did. I laid the folder flat on the box and looked at Cliff. $31,400, I said. Over 5 years, not counting the wedding? Cliff set his coffee down. The wedding, too. $5,600. Check written directly to the venue. I paused. He told Sabrina's family he and Gloria handled it themselves. Cliff was quiet for a moment. Outside in the hallway, a cart rattled past. Somewhere down the ward, a phone rang twice and stopped. What are you going to do? He asked. I thought about my father, a man who had worked in a steel plant in Lackawanna for 34 years and never once complained about it, who had told me exactly once when I was 17 and furious about something I could no longer remember. Son, don't argue with people who want to use you. Let them show you who they are, then act accordingly. I had spent 68 years acting kindly, acting patiently, acting like a man who believed the best of people even when the evidence suggested otherwise. I was still going to act accordingly. I just had a different understanding now of what that meant. I'm going to make some phone calls, I said. Cliff picked his coffee back up. You want company? I always want company, Cliff. I closed the blue box and set my hands flat on the lid. But first, I need you to hear something, because you are the only person I trust to hear it straight and not try to talk me out of it. He leaned back in the chair and crossed his arms and looked at me with the steady patience of a man who had spent half a century waiting for circuits to tell him what they needed. I am listening, he said. I told Cliff everything, not the way you tell a story to someone who needs the background filled in. Cliff already knew Gloria. He had met Marcus at the company Christmas party years ago and shaken his hand and later told me quietly that the boy had a weak handshake and even weaker eye contact, which from Cliff was about as sharp a character assessment as you were going to get. What I told him was the sequence, the Facebook post, the iMessage thread, the receipt with the wrong address, the photographs Patty had taken of Marcus loading my reading lamp into the trunk of that silver Audi at 7 in the morning. Cliff listened the way he always listened, without moving much, without interrupting, with his coffee cup balanced on his knee and his eyes on a fixed point somewhere between the floor and the window. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The house is in your name." "Only mine," I said, "since '87. And the car payments, the insurance, the utilities, all in my name, all automatic, all still running." He nodded slowly. "So right now today you are still paying for everything." "Every last dollar," I said. Cliff set his coffee cup on the windowsill and folded his hands in his lap. "Well," he said, "that seems like something you could change." I picked up my phone. The first call was to Northeast Auto Insurance, where I had been a policyholder for 23 years. I had Marcus added to my policy in 2019 when his own coverage lapsed, and he told me he was between jobs and just needed a few months. A few months had become 5 years. The representative who answered was named Kevin, and he was efficient and pleasant, and had me removed from the policy in under 4 minutes. I thanked him. He wished me a good afternoon. I crossed the first item off the list I had written on the back of a hospital menu. The second call was to First Niagara Bank, where I maintained a checking account, and where Gloria had an authorized card linked to my account for 11 years. The representative confirmed that I was the primary account holder, which allowed me to remove the authorized card. The representative confirmed that the cardholder of record was Raymond Earl Stafford, which meant I had the authority to close the supplemental card without Gloria's consent or signature. It took 6 minutes. The card was deactivated effective immediately. I crossed off the second item. The third call was to National Fuel, the gas company that serviced Nottingham Terrace. Fourth was to New York State Electric and Gas. Fifth was to the Water Authority. Each call followed the same pattern: account holder verification request, to cancel automatic payment authorization confirmation number, goodbye. None of the representatives argued with me. None of them asked why. They were doing their jobs, and so was I. Cliff watched all of this from the visitor chair without saying a word. At some point he got up, refilled his coffee from the thermos Patty had left the day before, and sat back down. He did not offer opinions. He did not ask if I was sure. He understood the way men who have worked with electricity understand that once you have identified the source of a problem, you do not debate whether to fix it. You cut the power, and you begin. I set the phone down on the tray table and looked at the list. Every item had a line through it, except one, the Audi payment, which transferred automatically from my savings account on the 14th of each month. The bank on call number 9 had already taken care of that. I picked up the folder of printed messages. 22 of them, paper-clipped in chronological order going back to March of 2019. I read through them again slowly, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to remember exactly what each one said before I put them away for good. Dad, just need a little help this month. I swear I will get it back to you. Dad, I know I keep asking and I hate asking, but the timing is just really bad right now. Dad, please do not be mad. I know this is a lot, but you have always come through for me, and I would not ask if I did not really need it. Dad, I know I said last time was the last time. I set the folder down on top of the blue box. 42 years of working. Getting up before 5 on winter mornings when the temperature in Buffalo dropped below 0 and the van would not start on the first try. Eating lunch out of a thermos on job sites because there was never time to go anywhere. Coming home with burned fingers and sawdust in my collar, and sitting at the kitchen table after dinner going over the accounts to make sure everything balanced. Dad, I know I keep asking. He had kept asking because I had kept answering. That was the truth of it, and I was not going to pretend otherwise. I had made it easy to keep asking. I had made it easy for all of them. Cliff spoke from across the room. You all right over there? Yes, I said. I am better than all right, actually. I stacked the folder neatly on top of the deed and the payoff letter and closed the blue box. I need you to keep this somewhere safe tonight. Not at the house. My truck, he said. Locked. Nobody touches my truck. Good. I leaned back against the pillow and looked at the ceiling for a moment. 42 tiles. Always 42. Cliff. When I get out of here, I am going to need a few hours at the house, while they are still in Hawaii. Cliff uncrossed his legs and sat forward in the chair. "I will bring the truck," he said. Outside the window, the afternoon had gone gold and quiet, the way Buffalo afternoons sometimes do between the rain systems when the clouds pull back just long enough to let the light through. The maple trees along the street caught it and threw it back all orange and amber, burning from the inside out. By 4 in the afternoon, I had made 11 phone calls. I had not raised my voice once. I had not explained myself to anyone. I had simply made the calls, said what needed to be said, and hung up. It was the most peaceful afternoon I had experienced in years. Dr. Okafor came in earlier than usual that morning. He had his reading glasses on top of his head instead of in his coat pocket, which I had noticed was something he did when he was in a good mood, and he was carrying my chart in one hand and a paper cup of coffee in the other. He set the chart on the foot of my bed, pulled up the visitor chair, and sat down across from me the way doctors do when they have something worth saying. "Your numbers this morning are better than I expected them to be at this stage," he said. "Significantly better, honestly. Your heart rate is stable, your blood pressure has come down to a range I am comfortable with, and the enzyme levels we have been tracking have normalized." He paused and looked at me steadily. "If you are willing to make me some promises, Raymond, I think we can talk about getting you out of here tomorrow morning." I felt something loosen in my chest. "What kind of promises?" "The boring kind," he said. "No heavy lifting for 4 weeks. No job sites, no ladders. Nothing that puts sustained physical demand on your cardiovascular system. Daily walks, short ones to start. The medication schedule I am going to send home with you is not optional, every pill every day, no skipping, because you feel fine. And I want you back in my office in 2 weeks." He leaned forward slightly. "Can you do all of that?" "Every word of it," I said. He nodded, made a note in the chart, and stood. At the door, he paused and looked back at me. "Is there someone who can stay with you? The first week at home, it helps to have someone around." I thought about the house on Nottingham Terrace, about who would be there, about what I had read on that iPad. "I have someone," I said. "I will be taken care of." It was not a lie. It was just not the kind of answer he was expecting. Cliff arrived an hour later. He had been back to the house that morning to pick up a few more things I had asked for my shaving kit, a change of clothes for when I left the next day, and a brown envelope from the top shelf of the bedroom closet where I kept documents I did not want, mixed in with the everyday papers in the blue box. He set the bag on the chair and reached into the canvas tote he was carrying. "Found this," he said. "In the nightstand drawer on your side. I almost missed it. It was pushed back behind some paperbacks." He held out a small album, maybe 6 inches by 8, with a dark green cloth cover and no label on the spine. I did not recognize it. "That is not mine," I said. Cliff set it on the tray table between us. We both looked at it for a moment without touching it. Then I opened the cover. The first page had no photograph, just a line of handwriting in Gloria's careful looping script, the penmanship she had learned at St. Agatha's Elementary School in 1973 and had never lost. 4 words written in blue ink in the center of the page. "Our real memories." I turned the page. The photographs were printed on good paper, the kind you order from an online service, not the thin drugstore prints that fade in a few years. There were maybe 30 of them across 15 or 16 pages, slipped into clear plastic sleeves. The first few showed Gloria and a silver-haired man I recognized immediately as Stuart Crane, standing in front of a wrought iron balcony somewhere that looked like the French Quarter in New Orleans. Gloria was wearing a red dress I had never seen before. She was laughing with her whole face the way I had not seen her laugh in years. I turned more pages. Savannah, Georgia, a park bench under Spanish moss. Gloria leaning against Stuart's shoulder. Nashville, Tennessee, a honky-tonk bar, the two of them at a small table with drinks in their hands and a live band visible behind them. More pages, more cities, more photographs of a woman I had been married to for 30 years, building a second life in the spaces I had never thought to look. The dates on the photographs, printed small in the bottom corner of each one, went back 6 years. 6 years. I closed the album. I did not throw it. I did not tear it apart, or put my fist through the wall, or do any of the things that a man in a hospital room who has just discovered 6 years of photographs might reasonably be expected to do. I simply closed it and set it flat on the tray table and pressed both palms down on the cover and breathed. Cliff said nothing. He understood that some moments require a witness, not a response. After a while, I picked the album up and held it out to him. "Put it back," I said. "Exactly where you found it, behind the paperbacks." Cliff's eyebrows moved slightly. "Why?" "Because I do not need it anymore," I said. "I just needed to see it." He took the album from my hands without another word and tucked it back into the tote bag. I looked at the window. The morning was clear for the first time in days, the sky a clean and empty blue. The kind of sky that appears in Buffalo in October, like a small gift between storms. I reached for my phone and opened a new text message to Patty. "I found what I needed to stop feeling guilty," I typed. "Thank you for everything this week." Her reply came back in less than a minute. "You were never the one who should have felt guilty, Raymond. Not for one single day." I read it twice. Then I set the phone down and looked at the clear October sky for a long time, and something that had been knotted up somewhere behind my sternum for longer than I could accurately say began very slowly to loosen. Outside the window, the sky had gone a dark, clean gray. The kind of gray that comes before the weather finally breaks. Cliff made a second trip to the house that afternoon. I had asked him to check the storage shelf in the basement, the wooden shelf along the east wall where I kept tools I no longer used regularly, spare parts from old jobs, and a few boxes of things that had nowhere else to go. I needed my good wire strippers and a voltage tester I had been looking for since spring, and I figured as long as he was making the drive, he might as well bring anything else that looked like it belonged to me rather than to the house. He came back at 2:30, carrying a cardboard box and wearing an expression I could not immediately read. He set the box on the tray table without saying anything and reached inside. He brought out my wire strippers, the voltage tester, a canvas tool roll I had forgotten I owned, and a small framed photograph of my parents, taken sometime in the 1960s, standing in front of a car I did not recognize, with the easy posture of people who had not yet learned what was coming. Then he reached in again and brought out something else. It was an answering machine. The old kind, the kind that nobody makes anymore, a cream-colored plastic box about the size of a hardcover book, with a row of 4 buttons across the front, and a small cassette window in the upper right corner. A Panasonic KX T1456, if I remembered correctly. I had bought it in 2001 to replace the one that died, and it had sat on the kitchen counter for 5 or 6 years before cordless phones made it redundant, and I moved it to the basement shelf without quite being able to throw it away. Cliff held it out to me. "This yours?" "It is," I said. "There is a tape in it." He set it on the tray table. "I did not play it. Figured that was your call." I looked at the machine for a moment. The cassette window was clouded slightly with age, but I could see the brown magnetic tape inside still wound around its spools, still intact, after more than 20 years sitting on a basement shelf in western New York. The machine had been stored in a dry part of the basement, away from the furnace and the water heater. The tape would still be readable. I knew that the way I knew electrical things from experience, not from hoping. I pressed the rewind button. The machine made a thin mechanical whirring sound, the kind of sound that belongs to a different era entirely, and then clicked to a stop. I pressed play. There was a moment of tape hiss. Then a voice came out of the small speaker on the front of the machine, and my hand tightened on the bed rail before I could stop it. It was Marcus. But not the Marcus who had texted 8 words from Dallas and hung up on his father between client meetings. This was a different voice, entirely younger, lighter, carrying the particular quality of a 17-year-old boy who has not yet learned to be careful about what he lets people hear. "Hey Dad, it is me. I just wanted to call and say thanks for fixing my bike this morning. I know you had to get up early to do it before work, and you did not have to do that. Mom said you were already gone by 5:30. So, I just wanted to say thanks. You are the best dad ever. I mean it. Love you, old man." The tape ran another few seconds of silence, then hissed to a stop. The hospital room was absolutely still. Cliff had not moved from the visitor chair. He was leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, looking at the floor between his feet. Neither of us said anything for what felt like a very long time, but was probably less than a minute. I had forgotten about the bike. A second-hand Trek mountain bike that Marcus had wanted for his 16th birthday, and saved most of the money for himself working weekends at the grocery store on Elmwood. And I had covered the last $60 because he was 47 short and had worked hard enough to deserve the difference. The rear derailleur had jammed the following spring, and he had come home from school to find it fixed, leaning against the garage wall with a piece of electrical tape wrapped around the handlebar where the grip had been tearing. He had been 17 years old. He had called to say thank you. I reached out and pressed the stop button on the machine. Then I picked it up with both hands and held it for a moment, feeling the weight of it, the particular lightness of old plastic that has dried out over decades. I thought about the boy who had left that message. I thought about the man who had written, "Dad, I know I keep asking on 22 separate occasions, and never once said thank you." I set the machine in the cardboard box beside the bed. Cliff looked up. "You keeping it?" I looked at the box for a long moment, at the cream-colored plastic, at the clouded cassette window, at the 4 buttons across the front that still worked, that would still play that voice back as many times as I wanted to hear it. "No," I said. I pushed the box toward the edge of the tray table toward the small waste bin on the floor beside the bed. Cliff reached out and moved the bin closer without being asked. "You sure?" he said. I looked at the machine one final time, at the voice inside it, at the boy who had left it there 20 years ago, standing in some kitchen somewhere grateful for a fixed bicycle and an early morning and a father who had gotten up at 5 to help him before the sun came up. "So that boy does not live here anymore," I said. Cliff nodded once. He did not argue. He did not tell me I might regret it, or suggest I sleep on it, or offer the kind of well-meaning interference that passes for comfort in moments like this one. He simply nodded the way you nod when a man tells you something true that cost him something real to say. I lay back against the pillow and looked at the ceiling. 42 tiles. Always 42. I was not grieving the man Marcus had become. I had made my peace with that man over the past 6 days in ways I had not anticipated when the ambulance brought me here. What I was grieving lying in that hospital bed with the October light fading outside the window was the boy on the tape. The 17-year-old who had saved $47 working weekends and called home to say thank you. Those were 2 very different kinds of loss, and I had been carrying both of them, I understood now, for much longer than I had realized. Sandra came in at 6 to do the final vitals check, and she was smiling before she even looked at the monitor. "Everything looks good, Mr. Stafford," she said, pulling the cuff free and making her note. Dr. Okafor will be by at 7 to sign your discharge papers. You have someone coming to get you." "He is already in the parking lot," I said. She laughed a real laugh, not a professional one. "Of course he is." She straightened the blanket at the foot of my bed out of habit, even though I was about to leave it forever, and touched my arm briefly before she walked out. You take care of yourself, and follow the doctor's orders this time." "This time," I said, "as opposed to all the other times I have been in cardiac care." "Men your age," she said cheerfully and left. Okafor arrived at 7:10 with my discharge paperwork on a clipboard and went through it with me line by line the way he did everything thoroughly without rushing, making sure I understood each instruction before moving to the next. Medication names, dosages, timing, activity restrictions. Warning signs that meant I needed to call his office immediately versus warning signs that meant I needed to call 911. He made me repeat the list back to him twice, and when I got it right both times, he signed the bottom of the page and handed me my copy. 2 weeks, he said at the door. "My office, do not make me track you down." "You will not have to," I told him. Cliff was idling in the pickup truck at the curb outside the main entrance, the engine running and the heater going. Because the morning had turned genuinely cold overnight, the first real cold of the season, the kind that gets into your bones and reminds you that Buffalo in October is just November practicing. He had a cup of coffee waiting in the cup holder on my side, and a breakfast sandwich from a place on Elmwood wrapped in foil on the seat. I got in, buckled my seatbelt, and picked up the coffee. "Ready," Cliff said. "Drive," I said. We went to Nottingham Terrace. I had not been inside the house in 7 days. Cliff had his key. I had given him a spare 20 years ago for emergencies the way neighbors do, and he had never needed to use it until this week. He unlocked the front door and pushed it open and stepped back to let me go in first. The house smelled the way it always smelled. Wood and old carpet and the particular combination of cleaning products Gloria had used for 30 years. The morning light came through the front windows at a low angle, catching the dust motes in the air and turning them gold. It was a good house. It had always been a good house. I stood in the front hallway for exactly 10 seconds. Then I went to work. We had agreed the night before on a system. I would identify, Cliff would carry. Nothing that was not clearly and unambiguously mine. Clothes from my side of the closet, I had always kept my things on the left, Gloria on the right, and that line had never shifted in 30 years. My tools from the basement, the framed photographs of my parents and my grandparents that had hung in the hallway since before Marcus was born. My father's wristwatch from the dresser drawer where I had kept it since he died. The blue box, which was already in Cliff's truck. I went through every room methodically, the way I would assess a job site, starting at the top of the house and working down, making decisions quickly and without sentiment. Master bedroom, office, bathroom. The kitchen where I took 3 things: a cast iron skillet I had owned since 1984, a coffee mug my mother had given me the Christmas before she passed, and a photograph of Tyler at age 2 laughing at something outside the frame of the camera, his arms stretched wide. I left everything else exactly where it was. Gloria's dishes, her curtains and her throw pillows and the decorative things she had arranged on every surface over the years. Marcus's television in the larger bedroom, which he had moved himself, and which I had no interest in touching. The leather recliner in the living room that I had bought 15 years ago, and which until I read those iMessage threads, I had assumed I would die in. I left it. It was just furniture. Cliff loaded the truck in 4 trips. On the 3rd trip, I walked through the empty master bedroom and stood at the window that looked out onto the backyard, the yard I had mowed every week from April to November for 35 years, the maple tree in the far corner that I had planted as a sapling, The spring Marcus turned 3. It was burning now, full orange, the way all the maples were burning this October, like the whole city was trying to show you something before the cold came. I turned away from the window. In the kitchen, I took the photograph from my shirt pocket, a 4x6 print Cliff had made at a drugstore the previous afternoon, scanned from the original in my files. It showed the three of us in 1998, standing in the backyard in summer. Marcus was 11, sunburned, holding a popsicle. Gloria was laughing at something I could not remember. I was standing between them with my hand on Marcus's shoulder, squinting into the sun. I set it face up on the kitchen counter exactly in the center. Then I took a note card from my shirt pocket. 4 sentences written by hand that morning in the hospital room before Okafor arrived. I turned the photograph over and taped the note card to the back. Then I took a pen from my jacket and wrote 5 words directly on the back of the photograph just above the note card, in letters clear enough to read without glasses. What you are looking for is on the other side. Then I turned the photograph face up again, so the image of the 3 of us in that backyard was the first thing anyone would see. Patty appeared in the doorway from outside her blue raincoat, buttoned to the chin against the cold. She looked at the photograph on the counter, then at me. "You all right?" she asked. "Keep going," I said. She nodded and went back down the front walk. I stood in the kitchen one last moment, looking at the counter at the photograph at the kitchen I had eaten breakfast in for 30 years. Then I walked to the front door and pulled it shut behind me. I did not look back. Not because I was not sad, but because I had already said goodbye to this house a long time ago. I just had not known it until now. I was not there when they came home. I want to be clear about that. I did not hide in the backyard or park down the street, or do any of the things a smaller man might have done to watch the moment land. I was 40 miles away by the time Gloria and Marcus pulled into the driveway on Nottingham Terrace. Sitting in a motel room in a town called Batavia with a ham sandwich I had bought from a gas station and a cup of decent coffee that Cliff had found at a diner 2 exits back. I know what happened, because Patty called me from her kitchen window at 4:17 in the afternoon and described it to me the way a sportscaster describes a game, calmly, precisely, with the particular pleasure of someone who has been waiting a long time to report good news. "They just pulled in," she said. "Gloria's rental car. Marcus is driving." "How does she look?" I asked. "Tanned," Patty said. "She looks tanned and rested and very surprised to see that your truck is not in the driveway." A pause. "They are going inside now." I set my sandwich down and waited. Patty stayed on the line. I could hear her breathing, and the faint sound of her kitchen television turned low, and once a car going past on the street outside her window. She had positioned herself at the kitchen sink, which gave her a direct sight line through her window to our front door and part of the living room through the gap in the curtains. A viewing angle she had cultivated over 19 years of being the kind of neighbor who paid attention to things. "Nothing yet," she said. "They must be going through the rooms." I could imagine it. The way the front hallway would have felt wrong immediately, too much echo the particular hollowness of a space that has lost half its contents. The living room with the furniture rearranged by absence. The master bedroom with only Gloria's things remaining on her side of the closet, my side a row of empty hangers. The basement shelf with its gaps where the toolboxes had been. "Patty," I said, "when they find the photograph, call me back." "I am not hanging up," she said firmly. "I have nowhere to be." 4 minutes passed. Then Patty made a sound, not quite a word. Something between an exhale and a laugh pulled back at the last second. "Gloria just came into the kitchen," she said, her voice dropping slightly. "She is looking around. She found it. She is picking it up right now." I held the phone against my ear and looked at the water stain on the motel room ceiling and waited. She is reading the front, Patty said, just standing there holding it. Her hand is shaking, Raymond. I can see it from here. Another pause. She turned it over. The line went quiet for a moment. Raymond. Patty's voice had changed. Something careful had come into it. She sat down on the kitchen floor, not in a chair, not leaning against the counter. On the floor. I thought about Gloria sitting on the kitchen floor of the house on Nottingham Terrace. The floor I had refinished myself in 2011 on my hands and knees for 3 days with a rented sander and 2 coats of polyurethane, and I felt something move through me that was not satisfaction and was not pity and was not anything I had a ready word for. Marcus came in, Patty continued. He grabbed the photograph out of her hands. He is reading it now. He is Raymond. He is red in the face. He is shouting something. I cannot hear through the glass, but I can see his mouth. A pause. Gloria is still on the floor. I had written 4 sentences on that note card. I had chosen each one carefully the way I chose wire gauges for a job the right size for the load, nothing heavier than necessary, nothing that would fail under pressure. The sentences were these. The house has been in my name since March of 1987, 2 years before we met. The mortgage was paid in full in April of 2003 with my money. The document behind this note is a copy. The original is somewhere safe. Below the 4 sentences, one more line in slightly larger handwriting, because I wanted it to be the last thing they read and the first thing they remembered. I did not take anything that was yours. I only stopped letting you use what was mine. Marcus is on the phone, Patty reported. Pacing. Gloria is up off the floor now. She is on her phone too. A brief pause. They are both on their phones at the same time, in the same kitchen, not talking to each other. Who are they calling? I asked. Patty was quiet for a moment. Gloria just said a name out loud. I could read her lips through the window. Another pause. She said Mitchell. That is the name of their family attorney. I have heard Marcus mention him before. I picked my sandwich back up. Good, I said. Let him explain what separate property means. I picked my sandwich back up and took a bite. It was not a good sandwich. Gas station ham on white bread with too much mustard, the kind of sandwich you eat because you need fuel and not because you want to. But I ate it anyway, sitting on the edge of a motel bed in Batavia, New York, listening to Patty describe my wife and my son standing in my kitchen, making frantic phone calls to people who were not going to be able to help them. Raymond, Patty said after a while. Still here, I said. She is crying now. Gloria, standing at the kitchen window, crying. Her voice was neutral, not unkind. I thought you should know. I thought about that. About Gloria standing at the kitchen window of the house on Nottingham Terrace, looking out at the backyard she had lived in for 30 years, crying. I thought about the album with the green cover and the 4 words on the first page. I thought about the caption she had written. Finally taking the trip we always talked about. And I thought about the word always and what it meant coming from her. Somebody I know, I said. Patty was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You doing all right out there? Good, I said, and I meant it. I actually am. The motel in Batavia had thin walls and a heater that cycled on and off every 12 minutes, with a sound like someone clearing their throat in the next room. Cliff had taken the room beside mine. After Patty's call, we had eaten dinner at a diner 2 blocks down, eggs and toast and coffee, the kind of meal that costs $11 and tastes exactly like what it is, which is to say honest and filling and nothing more. We had not talked much over the food. Cliff was not a man who required conversation to be comfortable in a room, and I was not in a mood to perform one. We had eaten, paid, walked back, and said goodnight at our respective doors, the way men of a certain age and a certain understanding say goodnight briefly, without ceremony. I was lying on top of the bedspread with my shoes off, watching a nature documentary about the Alaskan coastline, when my phone rang at 8:43 in the evening. Gloria. I looked at her name on the screen for 2 full rings. Then I picked up Raymond. Her voice was different from the last time she had called. That call 4 days into my hospital stay had been even and distant, the voice of a woman going through a pleasant obligation. This voice was tight, controlled in the way that things are controlled when considerable effort is going into the controlling. I need to talk to you. All right, I said. I set the remote on the bedside table and sat up against the headboard. I called the resort this afternoon, she said, to extend the reservation. How did that go? I asked. A pause, sharp and short. The card was declined, Raymond. They said the account was closed. That is correct, I said. You closed the account. Not a question. Her voice had picked up an edge, now something that wanted to become anger, but had not quite decided to commit to it yet. While I was still there. While I was still using it. The supplemental card was in your name, but linked to my primary account, I said. I am the account holder of record. I had the authority to close it at any time. I paused. I closed it on the 11th. Raymond. 3 days after you posted the photograph from the dock, I said. The one with Stuart Crane. The line went so quiet I could hear the Alaskan coastline documentary still murmuring from the television. Waves, wind, the cry of a seabird a long way from anywhere. That is not what it looked like, she said finally. Gloria. I kept my voice the way I kept my hands on difficult jobs, steady, precise, without wasted movement. I read your messages on the iPad. I saw the album in the nightstand drawer. The one with the green cover. I let that sit for a moment. New Orleans, Savannah, Nashville. 6 years. The silence this time was longer. When she spoke again, the controlled quality in her voice had cracked slightly, like a hairline fracture in drywall that you can see once you know where to look. I did not mean for it to go on that long. I believe you, I said. Most things that go wrong do not start out meaning to. Raymond, we need to talk about the house. My attorney will be in touch, I said. It was the first time I had used that phrase with her in 30 years of marriage, and the strangeness of it sat in my mouth like a coin. You do not have an attorney. I will by Monday, I said. Another pause. Then, in a voice that had dropped to something quieter and more uncertain, almost the voice I had known in the early years. Where are you? Somewhere I can think clearly, I said. Raymond. Her voice cracked on the second syllable. Actually cracked the way voices do when the thing holding them steady finally gives. I am sorry. I am genuinely sorry. I know that does not fix anything. I sat with that for a moment. 30 years of marriage. The woman who had cried at our wedding in 1994 in a church on Richmond Avenue with the afternoon light coming through the stained glass windows. The woman who had held my hand in the waiting room when Marcus was born and squeezed so hard she left marks on my palm that lasted 3 days. The woman who had written our real memories in careful cursive on the first page of an album that did not include me. I know you are, I said. I believe that too. Then can we? Good night, Gloria, I said. I ended the call. I set the phone face down on the bedside table and looked at the ceiling for a moment. The heater cycled on with its throat-clearing sound and pushed warm air into the room and cycled off again. The nature documentary had moved on to something about brown bears standing in a river, catching salmon in their mouths, with a patience that struck me at that particular moment as deeply admirable. There was a knock at the wall, one knock from Cliff's room next door. Our old job site signal for everything all right over there. I knocked back once. The signal for yes. I thought about all the times Gloria had said someday about Hawaii. Someday we will go. Someday when things slow down. Someday when the money is easier. I had said someday too, every time meaning it, the way you mean things you keep postponing because the present always seems to need something first. Someday had come after all. She had taken the trip we had always talked about. She had used the card linked to my account to pay for the room she shared with Stuart Crane, the same way she had used my account for everything else over the years, automatically, without thinking about it, because it had always been there, and she had never had a reason to consider what it would look like if it wasn't. Now she knew. I turned the volume back up on the nature documentary. The brown bear stood in the current with the water rushing around its legs, absolutely still waiting for the right moment, with a certainty that came from knowing exactly what it was doing and why. I thought about that for a while. Then I turned off the light and went to sleep. It turned out to be the best night of sleep I had gotten in years. I woke up at 5:40 without an alarm. Old habit. 42 years of early mornings had built a clock into my body that no amount of retirement had managed to dismantle, and I had long since stopped fighting it. I lay still for a moment in the thin gray light coming under the motel curtains, listening to the heater cycle and the distant sound of a truck on the interstate. And I thought about the fact that I had slept 7 hours without once waking up. I could not remember the last time that had happened in the house on Nottingham Terrace. I showered, dressed, and walked 2 blocks to a diner called the Countryside that opened at 6 and smelled like coffee and bacon grease and the particular warmth of a place that had been feeding people breakfast for 40 years. I took a booth by the window and ordered eggs over easy and wheat toast and a large coffee. And I sat there watching Batavia wake up through the glass while the morning came in, gray and cool and clean. My phone rang at 7:12. Marcus. I set my coffee cup down and looked at his name on the screen. The last time we had spoken, he had been in Dallas telling me he was in the middle of something. That had been 9 days ago. 9 days during which I had read his messages on the family iPad, made 11 phone calls, emptied my house, and driven 40 miles to a motel in a town he had probably never thought about once in his adult life. I picked up. Dad. His voice was different from his mother's. Gloria had been controlled, and then cracked. Marcus came in already cracked, with the particular brittleness of a man who had spent the night realizing that several things he thought he owned did not belong to him. Where are you? We need to talk. Good morning, Marcus, I said. Dad, come on. This is serious. I know it is, I said. You calling because you missed me, son? A pause. Long enough that I could hear him breathing. Tyler has been asking for you, he said. I set my fork down on the edge of my plate. Tyler was 4 years old. He had his mother, Sabrina's dark eyes and my father's wide forehead and a laugh that came out of him like something he could not contain even when he tried, which he never really tried. The last time I had seen him was 3 weeks before my heart attack a Saturday afternoon when Marcus had dropped him off without warning because he and Sabrina had something to do, and Tyler and I had spent 4 hours building a model of the solar system out of painted styrofoam balls and wire hangers in my basement workshop. He had named every planet himself mostly correctly, and when we hung the finished thing from the workshop ceiling, He had stood underneath it, with his arms wide open, as if he could hold the whole thing up himself. That was the boy Marcus was reaching for right now. That was what he had decided to use. "Tyler has been asking for me," I said. My voice came out steady. I was proud of that in a quiet way. "That is good to hear. Dad, I am trying to tell you that if you keep making this difficult, it is going to affect everyone, including him. You understand what I am saying?" I picked up my coffee cup. The diner around me hummed with the ordinary sounds of a Tuesday morning plates conversation, the bell above the door, as someone came in from the cold. A woman 2 booths down was reading a newspaper and eating oatmeal. A man at the counter was telling the waitress about his daughter's soccer game. Everything was exactly as ordinary as it always was, and Marcus was on the phone trying to use my 4-year-old grandson as a bargaining chip. "Are you telling me I will not be able to see Tyler?" I asked. "I am saying cooperation goes both ways," he said. "That is all I am saying." I put the coffee cup down carefully so it did not make a sound against the saucer. "Marcus," I said, "I want you to listen to me very carefully, because I am going to say this once, and I am not going to repeat it. Dad, Tyler is going to grow up," I said. "He is going to grow into a man who asks questions. He is going to ask you why his grandfather was not at his birthday parties. He is going to ask why he stopped hearing from me. And when that day comes, Marcus, and it will come, because that is what children do, they grow up and they start asking, you are going to need a good answer for him." I paused. "Make sure you have one." The line was absolutely silent. "Oh, there is paperwork," Marcus said finally. His voice had dropped to something flatter and more careful. "About the house. We need you to sign some things." "Is that what this call was actually about?" I asked. He did not answer. He did not need to. "Goodbye, Marcus," I said. I ended the call and set the phone face down beside my plate. The eggs had gone slightly cold. I ate them anyway, looking out the window at the street where a woman in a yellow coat was walking a large dog that kept stopping to investigate the base of every lamppost with the focused intensity of a professional. Cliff appeared in the diner doorway at 7:25, still in his jacket from the night before, scanning the room until he found me. He came over and slid into the booth across from me and flagged the waitress without sitting all the way down. "Marcus called," I said. "I figured." The waitress poured his coffee and he wrapped both hands around the cup. "How bad?" "He used Tyler," I said. Cliff was quiet for a moment. He looked out the window, then back at me. "You all right?" I thought about Tyler standing in the basement workshop, with his arms stretched wide under a solar system, made of painted styrofoam balls, trying to hold all of it up himself. "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." I picked up my coffee. "You ready to drive?" Cliff drained half his cup in one go and set it down. "South," he said. "South," I said. "Somewhere I have never been." Before I reveal what happened next, when they finally confronted each other, face-to-face, comment Raymond or the number 100 down below. So I know you're still here with me. And please note the following part of the story contains some dramatic and fictional details crafted for entertainment. If you prefer not to continue, feel free to pause or leave the video right here. Patty called me on a Wednesday afternoon to tell me they were coming. She had held out for 3 days. Gloria had knocked on her door Monday morning, then again Tuesday evening, each time asking if Patty knew where I was. Each time Patty had said she was not sure which was true enough in the technical sense, that she did not know the exact room number. By Wednesday she called me and said, "Raymond, I cannot keep lying to a woman's face. Even this woman and I told her it was all right." Tell her Erie. Do not give the address. Just Erie. They found the motel by calling everyone in the city, apparently. There were not that many. I knew they were coming by noon. I spent the afternoon in the same way I had spent most of the previous 3 days, walking along the lakeshore in the cold, eating at diners, reading a paperback Western I had found in the motel lobby book exchange. I had slept well every night. I had taken my medications at the correct times. I had walked the distance Dr. Okafor recommended, and stopped when I felt tired, and did not push beyond what my heart was ready for. I was, by most measurable standards, doing fine. At 3:15, someone knocked on the door of room 7. Cliff was in the hallway when I opened the door. He had positioned himself against the wall to the left, arms crossed, not blocking anything, just present in the way that a man can be present when he wants you to know he is there if you need him. I gave him a nod, and he gave me one back, and I opened the door the rest of the way. Gloria and Marcus stood in the breezeway outside. Gloria looked smaller than I remembered, which I knew was not literally true, but was the impression she gave, smaller and more careful, the way people look when they have rehearsed something and are not entirely sure the rehearsal was sufficient. She was wearing a gray coat I recognized from 3 winters ago. Her hands were clasped in front of her, and her eyes were red at the corners in the way that eyes get when someone has been crying on and off for several days. Marcus stood slightly behind her and to the right. He was wearing a sport coat over a collared shirt, which struck me as an odd choice for a drive to Erie in October. And he had the expression of a man who had been told by his lawyer to remain calm and was finding this more difficult than anticipated. "Raymond," Gloria said. "Please, can we come in?" I stepped back from the door. They came in and stood in the center of the room, which was not a large room, and the 3 of us occupied it in a way that felt immediately crowded. I sat in the chair by the window. I did not offer them the bed or the desk chair. They remained standing. "We drove 2 hours, Marcus said. "I know," I said. "Sit down if you want." Neither of them sat. Gloria started. She had clearly decided she would go first, and she spoke with the careful pace of someone delivering words they have chosen in advance. "Raymond, I know I have made mistakes, serious mistakes, and I am not here to pretend otherwise." Her voice held, barely, but it held. "But 30 years is 30 years. We built something together, and I believe that walking away from all of that without even trying is not the answer." "What would trying look like?" I asked. She opened her mouth and then closed it. She had not expected a question. She had expected an argument or silence or the kind of defensive anger that would give her something to push against. My asking a genuine question seemed to confuse her. "Counseling," she said finally. "Talking. Working through what went wrong." I nodded slowly. "And Stuart Crane." Her jaw tightened. "That is over." "Is it?" I said. Not a question. Marcus stepped forward slightly. "Dad, look. Whatever happened between you and Mom, that is between you two. But the house is a separate issue, and we need to talk about it practically. You cannot leave and expect everything to stay frozen." "I did not leave the house frozen," I said. "I left it exactly as it was. Your television is still in the room you moved yourself into. Your mother's dishes are still in the cabinet. I took what was mine. I left what was not. And the deed," he started, "has been in my name since 1987, I said. "You knew that." "I did not know that," he said, and his voice climbed slightly on the last word, the first real crack in the composure he had walked in with. "Nobody told me that." "Nobody told you," I said, "because you never asked. You assumed. There is a difference." I looked at him steadily. You told Gerald Whitmore you were going to inherit that house. His face reddened from the collar upward, the same way Patty had described through the kitchen window 4 days ago. Gloria put her hand on his arm. Marcus. A warning. He pressed his lips together and looked at the floor. She turned back to me. Her eyes were filling now, and she did not try to stop it. Tears ran down both cheeks, and she let them standing in the center of that small motel room in Erie, with her hands clasped and her gray coat and 30 years of history between us. Raymond, she said. Family. Please. Family is more important than any of this. I stood up from this chair. I was not angry. I want to be clear about that. What I felt standing up from that chair was not anger, and it was not contempt, and it was not the hot satisfaction of a man who has been wronged and is finally in a position to say so. What I felt was something quieter and more final than any of those things. Something that had been finding its way toward this room for a long time. I looked at Gloria, then at Marcus, then back at Gloria. You do not miss me, I said. You miss what I was paying for. Gloria flinched, as if I had said something sharp. Marcus looked up from the floor. I walked to the door and opened it. Cliff was still in the hallway, still leaning against the wall, still exactly where he had been. He straightened slightly when the door opened. Gloria and Marcus looked at the open door, then at me, then at each other. They walked out. I closed the door behind them, slowly, without force. The latch clicked into place with a small, clean sound, the kind of sound a thing makes when it fits exactly where it is supposed to go. Cliff knocked twice on the door from outside. The all-right signal. I knocked back once. 2 weeks after Erie, I called a real estate agent in Buffalo. Her name was Carol Dietrich, and she had been selling houses in the greater Buffalo area for 26 years. I had found her through a referral from Dennis Purcell, the former co-worker, who had remembered my birthday with a text message while my own family had not. Dennis said Carol was straightforward and did not waste people's time, which were the two qualities I valued most in anyone I did business with. I called her on a Thursday morning from a coffee shop in Erie, where I had become a regular over the previous 2 weeks, and she answered on the second ring and got down to business inside of 30 seconds. I explained the situation plainly. The house had been in my name since 1987. The mortgage had been paid off in 2003. There were no liens, no disputes, no complications of that particular kind. I would be filing for divorce, and my attorney, a woman named Susan Hale, whom Cliff had recommended, and who had reviewed my documents by phone the previous week, had confirmed that as sole owner of separate property, I had the right to list the house without Gloria's consent, provided we moved forward correctly and promptly. Carol came by the house the following Tuesday for the walkthrough. She called me afterward with the number. It was a good number. More than I had expected, honestly, because I had not been following the Buffalo real estate market with any particular attention for the past decade, and things had apparently moved in a direction that favored sellers in the neighborhoods along Nottingham Terrace. Carol said she could have offers within 2 weeks if we priced it right. I told her to price it right. Patty called me 3 days after I listed it. Gloria got the first utility bill, she said, without preamble. She was eating something crunchy on the other end of the line. Crackers, probably the kind she kept in a bowl on her kitchen counter. National Fuel. I know because she knocked on my door yesterday evening and asked if I knew why the autopay had stopped working. What did you tell her? I asked. I told her she would need to call the billing department and set up a new account in her own name, Patty said. I also told her the number for customer service because I am a helpful person. You are a very helpful person, I said. She did not look pleased, Patty added. But she wrote the number down. I thought about Gloria standing on Patty's front step in October, writing down the customer service number for the gas company that had been billing my account automatically for 11 years. I thought about what it must have felt like to write that number down, the specific practical weight of a thing you have never had to do before, suddenly becoming something you have to do right now in the cold on a neighbor's doorstep. I did not feel satisfaction about that. Or if I did, it was a very small and quiet kind that I did not examine too closely. The second call from Patty came 4 days later. Marcus had been pulled over on Elmwood Avenue by a Buffalo police officer who ran his plates and discovered the vehicle registration was flagged for lapsed insurance. He had been driving on an uninsured vehicle for 11 days since the policy I had maintained for 5 years was canceled. The officer had issued him a citation under New York Vehicle and Traffic Law Section 319, which carried a fine and a mandatory license suspension if not resolved within a specified period. Marcus had called a tow truck and taken a rideshare home. Patty had heard this from the Garfields next door, who had seen the police cruiser from their front window. "He is driving Sabrina's car now," Patty said. "The Audi is in the driveway." I thought about that silver Audi sitting in the driveway of the house on Nottingham Terrace. Uninsured registration flagged, representing $9,800 I had transferred into Marcus's account across 31 monthly payments, while he told everyone he knew that he had bought it himself. "Good to know," I said. The third call came on a Friday. Gloria's supplemental credit card had apparently been her primary method of payment for most regular purchases. Groceries, gas subscriptions, the recurring charges that accumulate invisibly in a modern life until the thing paying for them disappears and they all surface at once. Patty had not witnessed this directly. She had heard it from Gloria, who had knocked on her door again this time to ask if she could borrow $20 for gas because her own card had a spending limit. She had apparently never had reason to discover before. Patty had lent her the $20. "You did not have to do that," I said. "I know," Patty said. But she looked genuinely frightened, Raymond. Not performing frightened. Actually frightened. Like someone who has just realized they do not know how to do something they should have learned a long time ago. I held the phone for a moment without speaking. "That is not a criticism of you," Patty added quickly. "I know it is not," I said. "I made it easy not to learn. That was my part in it. I meant that. I had not woken up in that motel room in Batavia feeling nothing but righteous. I had built a life where I handled everything, where the answer to any problem was simply Raymond taking care of it, and somewhere in the building of that life, I had made myself so thoroughly available that I had disappeared into the arrangement entirely. That was not only their doing. Some portion of it was mine. Cliff was sitting across from me at the coffee shop table reading the local paper. He lowered it slightly and looked at me over the top of the page. "How is she?" he asked. "Learning things," I said. He nodded and went back to the paper. That evening, Carol Dietrich called to tell me we had 2 offers on the house, and one of them was above asking price. She walked me through both in the practical, unhurried way she did everything. I asked her 2 questions. She answered both clearly, and I told her to move forward with the stronger offer. "You will need to sign some paperwork," she said. "We can do it electronically, if that is easier." "That is easier," I said. I signed the papers that night at the coffee shop table on the iPad that had once shown me things I could not unsee, and I sent them back to Carol Dietrich. And outside the window, the eerie evening was doing what eerie evenings in late October do, turning dark early and cold, and reminding you that winter was no longer a theory. It was all things considered a beginning instead of an ending. We left Erie on a Tuesday morning in early November. when the temperature was 31 degrees and the windshield of Cliff's truck needed 4 minutes of defrost before either of us could see through it clearly. Cliff had driven south before. He had a son in Tennessee he visited every couple of years, and he knew the route through Pennsylvania and into the mid-Atlantic states well enough that he did not need the GPS until we crossed into Virginia. I had driven south exactly once in my adult life, a work trip to a trade show in Charlotte in 2009 that I had flown to and from in a single day and remembered only as a series of airport terminals and convention center carpet. This was different. This was the kind of trip that moves at the speed of the landscape changing around you slowly enough that you can actually watch one place become another. We stopped for gas in Morgantown, West Virginia, then lunch in Wytheville, Virginia, at a place off the interstate that had a hand-painted sign and 4 tables and the best pulled pork sandwich I had eaten in my life served by a woman named Donna, who refilled my sweet tea without being asked and called me hon in the particular way that Southern women of a certain age call everyone hon, which is to say warmly and without irony. I had not eaten pulled pork in years. Gloria did not care for it. I ordered a second sandwich. Cliff watched me eat it with an expression that was as close to delight as his face generally got, which meant one corner of his mouth moved slightly upward. "You look like a man discovering something," he said. "I think I am," I said. We drove through the afternoon and into the early evening through Tennessee and across the corner of Georgia, the landscape flattening and warming incrementally as we went south, the trees thinning and changing the air coming through the truck's vents, carrying something different by the time we crossed into Florida. Not warm exactly, not in November, but softer. The hard edge that Buffalo air had carried for the past 6 weeks was simply gone, and its absence felt like setting down something heavy that you had been carrying so long you had stopped noticing the weight. We reached Pensacola just after 8 in the evening. I had looked at listings online from the coffee shop in Erie, scrolling through photographs on the same iPad that had once shown me Gloria's messages. Small houses, mostly. Older neighborhoods near the water. The kind of houses that people who grew up in big cold cities sometimes move to when they are done with big cold cities, without quite being able to explain the pull of it, except that the light is different and the pace is different, and that turns out to be enough. There was one on a street called Bayou Boulevard, 3 blocks from Pensacola Bay, that had a screened porch along the front and a small yard with a live oak in the corner, and a kitchen that looked from the photographs like a kitchen a person could actually cook in, rather than merely pass through. It had been on the market for 41 days, which in a market like this meant either that something was wrong with it, or that it had simply not yet found the right person. I had scheduled a showing for Wednesday morning. We checked into a motel near the bay that night and walked down to the water after we unloaded the truck. The Gulf of Mexico in November at 8 in the evening was black and wide and moving with a slow, deep rhythm that had nothing to do with Lake Erie, nothing to do with the Niagara River, nothing to do with any water I had spent my life near. It smelled of salt and distance. The air was 58 degrees, which in Pensacola in November apparently counted as cool, because a man walking his dog along the seawall was wearing a heavy jacket and a wool hat. Cliff stood beside me with his hands in his pockets, looking out at the water. "You ever been here before?" I asked. "Once," he said. 1988. Drove down with my wife for our anniversary." He paused. "She liked the pelicans." I looked out at the dark water. "Muriel would have liked this," I said. Cliff's wife had passed 11 years ago quietly, and too soon the way good people sometimes do. "Yeah," he said. "She would have." We stood there for a while without needing to do anything else. The showing the next morning lasted 40 minutes. The agent was a young man named Brett, who wore a blue blazer and talked fast and clearly loved his job, which I found refreshing after a lifetime of dealing with people who did not. The house on Bayou Boulevard was smaller than Nottingham Terrace by about 800 square feet, which was precisely the right amount smaller for one person who no longer needed to fill rooms with things that were not his. The screened porch looked out over the front yard and the live oak, and when Brett opened the door to it, a warm Gulf breeze came through the screen and moved through the whole house in a single long exhale. I stood on that porch for a moment. The oak tree in the corner was not a maple. It did not turn orange and red in October like the trees along Delaware Avenue in Buffalo. It stayed green all year, apparently, because that was what live oaks did. They kept their leaves through the winter when everything else let go. I thought that sounded about right. "I will take it," I told Brett. He stopped mid-sentence about the HVAC system and looked at me. "You do not want to think it over." "Honey, I have been thinking things over for 68 years, I said. "I know what I want when I see it." That evening, I called Patty from the motel room. I told her about the house and the porch and the live oak and the Gulf breeze and the pulled pork sandwich in Wytheville that had been the best thing I had eaten since I could not remember when. She listened to all of it without interrupting, which for Patty was an act of considerable restraint. When I finished, she said, "Good for you, Ray, good for you." I could hear in her voice that she meant every single word of it. The closing paperwork came through on a Tuesday morning in late November. Carol Dietrich had emailed the documents to Susan Hale, who had reviewed them over the weekend, and called me Monday afternoon with a list of 4 items she wanted me to look at before signing. We went through them together on the phone, Susan explaining each one in plain language the way good lawyers do when they respect the person they are talking to. And by the end of the call, I understood what I was signing and why and what it meant for everything that came after. The notarization was done remotely. Florida and New York both recognized remote online notarization as legally valid, which meant I sat at the kitchen table of the house on Bayou Boulevard with my laptop open and a notary named Patricia Walsh appearing on the screen from an office in Albany. She verified my identity, watched me sign each page, applied her electronic seal, and was done in 18 minutes. She was efficient and pleasant and wished me well at the end, which felt like more than a formality. I closed the laptop and sat for a moment in the kitchen. The morning light was coming through the window over the sink, at an angle I had not yet grown accustomed to, lower than buffalo light, warmer in color. The kind of light that arrives in Florida in November like something the rest of the country has already put away for the season. The live oak in the front yard threw a moving shadow across the porch screen when the Gulf breeze came through a slow, shifting pattern that I had taken to watching in the mornings with my coffee, the way I used to watch the maple trees on Delaware Avenue turn color. Different trees, different light. The same habit of paying attention. I picked up the phone and called Carol. "It went through," she said before I could speak. She sounded genuinely pleased the way people sound when a transaction has gone cleanly from start to finish without the complications that real estate transactions are famous for producing. "Congratulations, Raymond. The funds will clear into your account within 3 business days." "Thank you, Carol," I said. "For everything. It was a good house," she said. "Good bones. The buyers are a young couple, first home." She paused. "They asked if there was anything you wanted them to know about it. I thought about that. About the things you know about a house after 37 years inside it. The way the third stair from the bottom creaked in cold weather, and the way to avoid it was to step on the left side near the wall. The way the kitchen faucet ran cold for 30 seconds before the hot water arrived in winter. The way the maple in the backyard lost its leaves later than every other maple on the block, always the last one holding on into November, while everything else had already let go. "Tell them the bones are good," I said, "and the maple in the backyard is worth waiting for in October." After I hung up, Cliff came in from the back porch, where he had been drinking his coffee and reading the Pensacola News Journal, which he had taken to buying from the gas station on the corner every morning, with the dedication of a man establishing a new routine. He sat across from me at the kitchen table and looked at my face and said, "Done, done," I said. He nodded once. Then he reached across the table and shook my hand, which was not something Cliff Morrow did easily or often, and the handshake said everything that neither of us was going to put into words. I thought about 42 years of work. The first job I had ever run on my own, a panel upgrade in a duplex on Grant Street in 1983, 200 a.m. service, and I had been so nervous I had checked every connection 3 times before I called the inspector. The job I had been doing when the pain arrived, kneeling beside Harold Briggs's breaker box on Elmwood. Every job in between, every early morning and every overtime shift, and every customer who paid in cash, and everyone who took 3 months to pay, and every Saturday I had spent on a ladder somewhere in the greater Buffalo area, keeping the lights on for other people. All of it had added up to something. I had not always known what. Now I did. That evening, I walked down to Pensacola Bay alone. Cliff had offered to come, and I had told him I needed an hour by myself, which he understood immediately, and without discussion, because that was the kind of man he was. I walked the 3 blocks from Bayou Boulevard to the seawall, and then down the steps to the narrow strip of sand along the water's edge. I took my shoes off. The sand was cool and fine and slightly damp near the waterline, and it shifted under my feet in a way that felt nothing like any surface I had stood on in 68 years of standing on surfaces. The Gulf of Mexico in November was dark and patient, moving with the same slow, deep rhythm I had noticed the first night, rolling in and pulling back with a regularity that had nothing to do with schedules or deadlines or the particular urgency that Buffalo in winter pressed into everything it touched. I stood there for a long time. I was not thinking about Gloria. I was not thinking about Marcus or the house on Nottingham Terrace or the blue box or the 22 messages or the album with the green cover or the cassette tape with the voice of a boy who no longer existed. I was not thinking about any of it because for the first time in longer than I could honestly calculate, there was nothing that required my thinking. There was only the sand under my feet, and the water in front of me, and the dark, warm sky above, and the particular silence of a place that had been here long before I arrived, and would be here long after I left. A pelican flew low over the water, close enough that I could hear the air moving through its wings. It banked once slowly, and then straightened and flew on down the coast, until it disappeared into the dark. I thought about Cliff's wife Muriel, who had liked the pelicans. I thought that was an excellent thing to have liked. The water came in around my feet and pulled back and came in again, and I stood in it and let it, and the 40 years settled somewhere they had needed to settle for a long time, and the night was warm enough, and the sky was wide enough, and the Gulf was patient enough for all of it. It turned out to be enough. The closing paperwork came through on a Tuesday morning in late November. Carol Dietrich had emailed the documents to Susan Hale, who had reviewed them over the weekend, and called me Monday afternoon with a list of 4 items she wanted me to look at before signing. We went through them together on the phone, Susan explaining each one in plain language, the way good lawyers do when they respect the person they are talking to. And by the end of the call, I understood what I was signing and why, and what it meant for everything that came after. The notarization was done remotely. Florida and New York both recognized remote online notarization as legally valid, which meant I sat at the kitchen table of the house on Bayou Boulevard with my laptop open and a notary named Patricia Walsh appearing on the screen from an office in Albany. She verified my identity, watched me sign each page, applied her electronic seal, and was done in 18 minutes. She was efficient and pleasant, and wished me well at the end, which felt like more than a formality. I closed the laptop and sat for a moment in the kitchen. The morning light was coming through the window over the sink, at an angle I had not yet grown accustomed to, lower than buffalo light, warmer in color. The kind of light that arrives in Florida in November like something the rest of the country has already put away for the season. The live oak in the front yard threw a moving shadow across the porch screen when the Gulf breeze came through a slow, shifting pattern that I had taken to watching in the mornings with my coffee the way I used to watch the maple trees on Delaware Avenue turn color. Different trees, different light. The same habit of paying attention. I picked up the phone and called Carol. "It went through," she said before I could speak. She sounded genuinely pleased the way people sound when a transaction has gone cleanly from start to finish without the complications that real estate transactions are famous for producing. "Congratulations, Raymond. The funds will clear into your account within 3 business days." "Thank you, Carol," I said. "For everything. It was a good house," she said. "Good bones. The buyers are a young couple. First home." She paused. "They asked if there was anything you wanted them to know about it. I thought about that. About the things you know about a house after 37 years inside it. The way the third stair from the bottom creaked in cold weather, and the way to avoid it was to step on the left side near the wall. The way the kitchen faucet ran cold for 30 seconds before the hot water arrived in winter. The way the maple in the backyard lost its leaves later than every other maple on the block, always the last one holding on into November, while everything else had already let go. "Tell them the bones are good," I said. "And the maple in the backyard is worth waiting for in October." After I hung up, Cliff came in from the back porch where he had been drinking his coffee and reading the Pensacola News Journal, which he had taken to buying from the gas station on the corner every morning with the dedication of a man establishing a new routine. He sat across from me at the kitchen table and looked at my face and said, "Done, done," I said. He nodded once. Then he reached across the table and shook my hand, which was not something Cliff Morrow did easily or often. And the handshake said everything that neither of us was going to put into words. I thought about 42 years of work. The first job I had ever run on my own, a panel upgrade in a duplex on Grant Street in 1983, 200-amp service, and I had been so nervous I had checked every connection 3 times before I called the inspector. The job I had been doing when the pain arrived, kneeling beside Harold Briggs's breaker box on Elmwood. Every job in between, every early morning and every overtime shift, and every customer who paid in cash, and everyone who took 3 months to pay, and every Saturday I had spent on a ladder somewhere in the greater Buffalo area keeping the lights on for other people. All of it had added up to something. I had not always known what. Now I did. That evening I walked down to Pensacola Bay alone. Cliff had offered to come, and I had told him I needed an hour by myself, which he understood immediately and without discussion, because that was the kind of man he was. I walked the 3 blocks from Bayou Boulevard to the seawall, and then down the steps to the narrow strip of sand along the water's edge. I took my shoes off. The sand was cool and fine and slightly damp near the waterline, and it shifted under my feet in a way that felt nothing like any surface I had stood on in 68 years of standing on surfaces. The Gulf of Mexico in November was dark and patient, moving with the same slow, deep rhythm I had noticed the first night, rolling in and pulling back, with a regularity that had nothing to do with schedules or deadlines, or the particular urgency that Buffalo in winter pressed into everything it touched. I stood there for a long time. I was not thinking about Gloria. I was not thinking about Marcus or the house on Nottingham Terrace, or the blue box, or the 22 messages, or the album with the green cover, or the cassette tape, with the voice of a boy who no longer existed. I was not thinking about any of it, because for the first time in longer than I could honestly calculate, there was nothing that required my thinking. There was only the sand under my feet and the water in front of me, and the dark, warm sky above, and the particular silence of a place that had been here long before I arrived, and would be here long after I left. A pelican flew low over the water, close enough that I could hear the air moving through its wings. It banked once slowly, and then straightened and flew on down the coast until it disappeared into the dark. I thought about Cliff's wife Muriel, who had liked the pelicans. I thought that was an excellent thing to have liked. The water came in around my feet and pulled back, and came in again, and I stood in it, and let it and the 40 years settled somewhere they had needed to settle for a long time. And the night was warm enough, and the sky was wide enough, and the gulf was patient enough for all of it. It turned out to be enough. I have told you my story, not to earn your sympathy and not to make Gloria or Marcus into villains for you to hate. I told it because it is true, and because the truth I have learned is the only thing that actually sets you free. Looking back, I stayed silent too long. I confused loyalty with surrender. I made myself so easy to overlook that I forgot I had a right to be seen. Do not do what I did. Do not wait for a hospital bed and an empty chair to tell you what your life has been missing. You deserve to know that while you can still do something about it. I believe God does not give us these seasons of loss to break us. He gives them to us to show us who we were before we started disappearing. These grandpa stories are not just about old men and empty houses. They are family story told in the hope that someone younger reads the signs earlier than I did. If even one grandpa stories reaches the person who needs it, someone sitting in a waiting room, someone staring at a ceiling at 3 a.m, then every word was worth writing. This is my personal belief. Dignity is not something anyone can take from you. It is only something you stop carrying. If this family story moved you, or if you recognized something of yourself in it, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me what you thought. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if grandpa stories like this one matter to you, subscribe to this channel so you never miss what comes next. Thank you for staying until the very end. It means more than you know. The stories on this channel contain fictional elements created for thoughtful entertainment. If this type of content is not for you, we respect that completely. Feel free to explore other stories that speak to your heart.